Girivaradari Jaya Gopijannavalabha Girivaradari Jaya Yashodanandana Brajajannaranjana Yashodanandana Brajajannaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Gopijannavalabha Girivaradari Jaya Gopijannavalabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Brajajannaranjana Yashodanandana Brajajannaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Gopijannavalabha Girivaradari Jaya Gopijannavalabha Girivaradari Yashodanandanam Rajajannaranjanam Yashodanandanam Rajajannaranjanam Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Shri Shri Radha Madhava Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Damodar Ki Jai Jai Om Vishnu Pada Paramahamsa Briva Jakacharya Stottara Sata Shri Srimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnu Pada Paramahamsa Briva Jakacharya Stottara Sata Shri Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Krantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Nitai Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari Bol. Namam Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimate Devamrita Swamini Tiramine Prachare Purvadakshancha Bhaktachar Vivinata Parartatapikaranyam Yasya Sarve Chite Namaha Namam Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swamini Tiramine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatyadesh Tanine Krishna 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 Krishna. Sorry to interrupt your regularly scheduled programming, but something came up, and so you get a double dose. I apologize. Uh, Reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, 7th Canto, Chapter 6, text number 8. Still hearing about Prahlad Maharaj's instructions to his demoniac schoolmates. But many of them became not demoniac after hearing from Prahlad, and they began to dance in ecstasy. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Durapurena kamena mohena cha baliyasa shesham griheshu saktasya pramatasya payatihi. Durapurena kamena mohena cha baliyasa shesham griheshu saktasya pramatasya payatihi. Durapurena kamena mohena cha baliyasa shesham griheshu saktasya pramatasya payatihi. Someone please recite the verse if you're feeling festive.
Durapurena kamena mohena chabaliyasa sheshang griheshi saktasya pramattasya payatihi.
Yeah, thank you, Prabhu. Word for word translation says, Durapurena, which is never fulfilled. Kamena, by a strong aspiration to enjoy the material world. Uh-oh. Mohena, by bewilderment. Cha, also. Baliyasa, which is strong and formidable. Shesham, the remaining years of life. Griheshu, to family life. Saktasya, of one who is too attached. Pramatasya, mad. Apayati, wastefully pass. He, indeed. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Again, this is Prahlad Maharaj speaking to his school friends, his very young school friends. We're talking first grade. He says, one whose mind and senses are uncontrolled becomes increasingly attached to family life because of insatiable lusty desires and very strong illusion. In such a madman's life, the remaining years are also wasted because even during those years, he cannot engage himself in devotional service. Purport. This is the account of 100 years of life. Although in this age, a lifetime of 100 years is generally not possible, even if one has 100 years, The calculation is that 50 years are wasted in sleeping, 20 years in childhood and boyhood, and 20 years in invalidity, jara vyadi, which means old age and disease. It's kind of like a package deal. This leaves only a few more years, but because of too much attachment to household life, those years are also spent with no purpose, without God consciousness. Therefore, one should be trained to be a perfect brahmachari in the beginning of life, and then to be perfect in sense control, following the regulative principles, if one becomes a householder. From household life, one is ordered to accept vanaprastha life and go to the forest, and then accept sannyasa. That is the perfection of life. From the very beginning of life, those who are ajitendriya, who cannot control their senses, are educated only for sense gratification, as we have seen in the Western countries. Thus, the entire duration of a life of even 100 years is wasted and misused. And at the time of death, one transmigrates to another body, which may not be human. At the end of 100 years, one who has not acted as a human being in a life of tapasya, austerity, and penance, must certainly be embodied again in a body like those of cats, dogs, and hogs. Therefore, this life of lusty desires and sense gratification is extremely risky. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Jnana-timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Tadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Cham Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitam Cha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhana Sutta Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Eva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Jai. So Prahlad Maharaj says, one whose mind and senses are uncontrolled becomes increasingly attached to family life because of insatiable lusty desires and very strong illusion. In such a madman's life, the remaining years are also wasted because even during those years he cannot engage himself in devotional service. Here, Prahlad Maharaj, of course, is not so much talking about us. Somehow, despite our various attachments, we are engaged in devotional service, but is illustrating what is a common condition for most people. That he's already calculated that so many years in life are wasted in youth, just kind of playing, not really doing anything practical. And then in old age, where jara and vyadi, the uh, the the twin torture of old age and death, take up a lot of time. It takes a lot of time as the body is aging because you have to constantly tend to its maintenance. And then so much time is spent sleeping or just laying in bed in activities which might as well be equivalent to sleep. It's kind of doing nothing. And that doesn't leave a whole lot of time for other activities. And so one who has no God consciousness, as Srila Prabhupada says here, spent with no purpose, uh, does not engage in devotional service, and then just continues to waste even more time being too attached to family life because of insatiable lusty desires and very strong illusion. And such people, they really, I mean, we wouldn't say it to their face, of course, because it's quite rude, but such people really waste their lives. And this is talking about those admirable people who have a family and take care of family. There are many, of course, who won't even come up to that level, a sort of refusal to take responsibility for others or to commit in a relationship to others. And that's certainly becoming the trend more and more today, as relationship statistics show that people are just doing it a lot less all over the world, but especially in the Western countries, because as Srila Prabhupada says, in the Western countries, people are educated only for sense gratification. And hey, why go through the difficulty of having a relationship and a family and committing to that? That's just an impediment to your sense gratification. So just don't do it. So that's becoming a very prominent trend, as indicated by plummeting birth rates all around the world, which has got the capitalist overlords in a bit of a tizzy because who's going to buy the stuff? Who's going to buy all the stuff if there's less people around? Heaven forbid our quarterly profits decline. Anyway, there's like actual economists talking about this. How are we going to maintain the sort of industries that we've built when after 2050 the human population is expected to decline from 10 billion very quickly down to 6 billion? And that might not seem like a big deal. It's like, hey, you know, 6 billion was only recently. But that decline is expected to happen very quickly because there's so few people producing children at a rate which covers the replacement level. So that's what happens when Western society is educated only for sense gratification, as Prabhupada says here. Prabhupada says that this life of lusty desires and sense gratification is extremely risky. It's risky for the individual, it's risky for society. That risk is being felt on the individual level, where depression and suicide is increasing, and that risk is being felt on the social level, where birth rates are decreasing, conflict increasing, and that's going to have very interesting ramifications in the next few years. So in this purport, Prabhupada says it's extremely risky. And yet, we read about 2 weeks ago that Prabhupada said Krishna consciousness is extremely easy. So we're learning about contrasting extremes. Yes, the selfish life of only satisfying one's senses is such a risk. It really is playing with fire. As Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Dushparena analena cha. What's that verse? Avritam jnanam etena jnanina nityavairina kamarupena konteya dushparena analena cha. Krishna describes the selfish motivation, kama, as being like a fire that burns and is never satisfied, insatiable. He says that it's the eternal enemy of the soul, and it covers one's pure knowledge. Avritam jnanam etena jnanina nitya vairina. Nitya vairina, one's eternal enemy. Did you know? The eternal enemy. It's not that person down the street who has a different ethnicity. It's actually kama rupena, the form of lust, burns like fire and is never satisfied. So this is very risky, extremely risky, to dedicate oneself to trying to satisfy the insatiable lusty desires. And just like a fire only increases the more one adds fuel, similarly, the lusty desires only increase the more one engages in it. Even if that engagement is the legal and justifiable form of family life. Still, it's a fire that one's playing with. It's the difference of lighting a fire in your fireplace or lighting a fire in your living room. It's still fire. It's still dangerous. Of course, it's much better to keep it in the fireplace. I always teach my kids because we have a fireplace and sometimes we light a fire. Try to teach the kids fire safety and always tell them fire stays in the fireplace because they get excited, putting the wood in or burning some other paper products or whatever. So I always tell them the fire stays in the fireplace. If I see the fire anywhere else, it's going to be a smackdown, figuratively. So similarly, our attempt at Grihastha ashram is keeping the fire in the fireplace. And it's contrasted with what Prahlad Maharaj is speaking about here, where one who has no God consciousness, whose mind and senses are uncontrolled, becomes increasingly attached to family life because of insatiable lusty desires and very strong illusion. And in such a madman's life, the remaining years are also wasted because he does not engage himself in devotional service. So we don't want to put ourselves in that category, of course. But we should recognize that even in the legitimate legal form of sense gratification, the license to enjoy sense gratification, Srila Prabhupada would sometimes call the Grihastha ashram a license for sense gratification, still is playing with fire. But we try to keep that fire in its rightful place within the fireplace, not spread all over the house. But it's risky. There's a risk. And if we just keep adding more and more fuel, the fire's not going to go out. That's not the solution to the lust problem. I hate to break it to everybody. Of course, many of you devotees are experienced, but for those of us who are still young and just getting that fire going, we should recognize that the solution to the insatiable lusty desire is not to keep adding fuel. The solution is to become firmly attached to Krishna. And so, if while committing ourselves to the so-called Grihastha ashram, trying to be upstanding citizens, family men and women, responsible, committed, if while playing that part, we can cultivate more attachment to the lotus feet of Sri Sri Radha Damodar by hearing and chanting their holy names, by engaging in their devotional service, by encouraging others to engage in their devotional service, then eventually the lust monster can be destroyed. Every ashram has a stance for dealing with this desire, the selfish desire. When we say kama, of course, it really is characterized by sex. That is certainly the most fascinating of sensual desires. But really, kama encompasses all selfish desire, all selfish motivation for anything, whether it be for money or for property or for fame or adoration or distinction. But it definitely comes to a bit of a climax, pun intended, in the sexual activity. So, one dedicated to this kama, even in the Grihastha ashram, is not going to find resolution. You don't get resolution by continuing to do it. We get resolution by becoming attached to Krishna. So the difference between us trying to be Grihastas and Prahlad Maharaj's diagnosis of the materialistic person is that we are engaging ourselves in devotional service, knowing that this is the cure for the selfish mentality, the cure for the egoistic obsession, which is so exhausting, which is so tiring. We're actually so tired of it, but it's a habit. Just keeps popping up. But the cure is to hear and chant about Krishna, not to reconcile and justify and make some sort of legal form of sense gratification, which is so common in all religious traditions, including our own, to try to justify and reconcile legal sense gratification. That does not cure one of kama. So every ashram has a stance. In three of the ashrams, the stance is uh, reducing sense gratification by not being involved with the opposite sex. That's three of the ashrams. And in the one ashram, we have a license for sense gratification, a license to build a bit of pleasure in the home, but one must overcome that desire by becoming attached to Krishna. That's the solution. That's the only solution. There's one medicine for all problems, the Bhavaroga, the solution for all of the diseases. What's that verse? Tarka Prabhu? Bhavaroga? Hold on. Thank Krishna that we have all these great apps now where you can really quickly search for all these things because my memory is so poor. And now you can just like find it in an instant. Nivrittatar sher upagiyamanad bhavosajach chotra manobhiramat ka uttama shloka gunanavadat puman virajeta vina pushagnat. Where in this verse it describes that descriptions of the Lord are the right medicine for the conditioned soul undergoing repeated birth and death. Therefore, who will cease hearing such glorification of the Lord except a butcher or one who is killing his own self? We read some other verse yesterday about Atmaha, one who kills one's own self. So the Bhavosadach, the right medicine for this kama, for this selfishness, for this lusty desire, for this egoistic obsession is only hearing descriptions of the Lord. That's the right medicine. So we got to get our daily dose. It starts with Srimad Bhagavatam. Well, should start with Mangalarti. But I would be a hypocrite because I'm not doing Mangalarti. But those of you who are close enough, starts with Mangalarti, hearing and chanting the holy names, chanting japa, hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, and engaging in devotional service. This is the right medicine. We have to take our medicine daily. We got to stick to the formula prescribed by Dr. Prabhupada. This is the right medicine for those who are undergoing, for those conditioned souls undergoing repeated birth and death. If you like, you can raise your hand if you are a conditioned soul undergoing repeated birth and death, in which case you should know that the real solution is not the legal justification of sense gratification in the Grihastha ashram, but to become increasingly attached to hearing and chanting about Krishna. And so we need to judge ourselves. Are we making progress and becoming more attached to Sri Sri Radha Damodar? We should judge and see. Take stock every year or every 5 years. How much progress have I made? How can that progress be measured? More time hearing and chanting about Krishna? More engagement in devotional service? More absorption? We judge our progress both externally and internally. Certainly, more time engaged in service is the best. Avyarta kalatvam, as we talked about yesterday. One symptom of pure devotion is to not waste any moment and always be engaged in service. But also we can judge internally how much devotion has increased in our heart. As it says in that important verse, Bhakti Pareshanubhavo Viraktir Anyatra Chaisha Trika Ekakala Prapadyamanasya Yatashna Tasyus Tushti Pushti Ksharapayonugasam. That devotion, direct perception of the Lord, and detachment from all other things occur and increase simultaneously in the heart of one who's taken shelter of the Lord, just as nourishment, relief from hunger, and satisfaction occur simultaneously for one engaged in eating. One knows when they've eaten, when they are satisfied. Similarly, we know if we are engaged in the Lord's service. We know when our absorption in the Lord is really satisfying the soul. Just like you can't tell a person if they've eaten enough. They know for themselves. Similarly, you can't tell a person that they are Krishna conscious. We have to judge for ourselves and see. I was really engaged in Krishna service just now. I really put my heart into the service. I really chanted with affection. Or not. Just like a person who's eaten, they know if I'm really satisfied or not. So, because none of us in this Zoom room are renunciates, we have some license for sense gratification. Still, we must judge. Am I making progress in attachment to Krishna? Am I taking the medicine, Bhavosadach? Or am I just keeping that fire burning as long as possible? Too afraid to let the fire of sense gratification to go out. Oh no. Sometimes we're afraid to make progress in Krishna consciousness because the fire of sense gratification will start to diminish. But I've identified with these things, with these sense gratifications. If they are no longer there, then who am I? Oh no. Attachment to Krishna is the cure for the selfish desire. I'm going to throw a lot of shlokas at everybody today, if that's okay. What's that famous one that Rupa Goswami says? Kamadi nirdahati kintu cha bhakti bhajam. What is that? Kamadi nirdahati kintu cha bhakti bhajam. No, no, that's from Brahma Samhita. What's that one? Oh my gosh. Now my intelligence is reawakened, and I refuse to accept the dictations of lusty desire. You're gonna love this, devotees. Oh my God. Wow, don't use Evernote, everybody. It's the worst app. Just show me my notes. Here we go. Kamadinam katina katita palita duni deshas tesham jatamayina karuna natrapano pashanti utrijai tadata yarupate sampratam labda buddhis tam ayata sharanam abhayam mam niyungshvat madasye. Rupa Goswami wants us to know how to deal with this selfish desire, this kama. He expresses the mood by which we're finally done. We don't want to just keep the fire lit. We don't want to keep justifying the sense gratification, but we really want to be free from that selfish desire and to become fully attached to Krishna. So Rupa Goswami prays, "O my Lord, there is no limit to the unwanted orders of lusty desires. Although I have rendered these desires so much service, they have not shown any mercy to me." Imagine working for someone and then they never let you go. There's a word for that. So Rupa Goswami is saying, I've rendered service to these desires and they've never shown any mercy to me. I have not been ashamed to serve them, nor have I even desired to give them up. O my Lord, O head of the Yadu dynasty, recently, however, my intelligence has been awakened, and now I am giving them up. Due to transcendental intelligence, I now refuse to obey the unwanted orders of these desires, and I now come to you to surrender myself at your fearless lotus feet. Kindly engage me in your personal service and save me. Mam niyungshvat madasye. So this is the attitude for us to finally get over our selfishness and become fully absorbed in Krishna. That's the solution. The medicine, Bhavosadach. Not to continue to justify, to reconcile, to make excuses. Well, it's okay that I have a little sense gratification here and there. It's all right. I'm still young. Got a couple of years left. We can do this for many, many lifetimes, actually, keeping that fire going. But at some point, we must become fully attached to Krishna, transform the lust into love. That's the goal of every ashram. And in the Grihastha ashram, we take a particular stance. In the other ashrams, where they are renounced, they take a particular stance, different stances to fight the lust monster. I don't know if anybody did wrestling in high school. I was on the wrestling team, believe it or not. It was before I even hit puberty, 90-pound division. Anyway, I was on the wrestling team, but you have different stances. You have like a defensive stance, you have an offensive stance. It's getting ready to deal with your opponent. So the Grihastha ashram takes a particular stance. But still, we must deal with that selfishness, that selfish desire, and transform lust into love, as our Param Guru, Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami says. That the difference between lust and love is like the difference between iron and gold. One is for the personal sense gratification, and one is for the pleasure of Krishna. I think I can find those verses quickly. God, I love these apps. It was hold on. It's in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, right? Where hold on. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, he says Atmendriya Priti Vancha Tare Bali Kama. Adi Lila, chapter 4, text 165. Give me 1 second, dear devotees. You're gonna love this. Krishna, 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 Krishna. He says, well, first he says, Kama, Prema, Dohankara, Vibina Lakshana, Loha Arahema Yaichi, Svarupe Vilakshana. Lust and love have different characteristics, just as iron and gold have different natures. What is that different characteristic? It's very simple. It's actually very simple. Atmendriya Priti Vanche, Tare Bali Kama. Krishnendriya Priti Icha Dare Prema Nama. The desire to gratify one's own senses is kama, lust. But the desire to please the senses of the Lord Krishna is prema, love. That's all there is to it. It's so simple but so profound. And for some of us, it might take a few lifetimes to get it. Certainly in the Grihastha ashram, the process is a little slower because we mix our own sense gratification with a little bit of service to Krishna. But still, no matter what, we must make this crucial transformation, this definitive transformation from lust to love. And it's very simple. We're so expert in lust. We're so expert in making plans and arrangements for our own sense gratification. We're very attentive to it. We're very attentive, very detailed when it comes to our own sense gratification, right? Like even early in the morning, if you're very groggy and you're kind of hardly even woken up yet, but you get into the shower, you know how to get just the right temperature for your sense gratification, right? For those of us who like a hot shower, you know how to just, even though you're hardly even conscious, but we're just so attentive to the detail when it's ready, when it's time for sense gratification. You got to get just the right temperature. Or if someone's going around with some delicious prasadam at some festival feast, we know how to be very detailed. Prabhu, more paneer, right? We say the words with such clarity. More paneer, less rice, no rice, waste of space. Give me more paneer, right? We pronounce the words so clearly, despite the other noise that might be in the room. It can be very clear when it comes time for sense gratification. But then when it's time to chant the Lord's holy names, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Krishna, 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 Krishna. We should be chanting those holy names with that same clarity as asking for more paneer prasadam. So we know how to be attentive. We know how to be committed, how to endure whatever difficulty to get that sense gratification, atmendriya priti. But love just means to do that for Krishna instead of doing it for the senses, atma indriya, the body and the senses. But just do that for Krishna, to very clearly pronounce Krishna's holy names, to very clearly, precisely, with all sorts of attention, make plans for the pleasure of Radha and Krishna. That's all there is to it. This definitive transformation is necessary. No matter what status of life we're in, even if we're grihasta and we have a license for sense gratification, we must become qualified to just please Krishna's senses. Go back home, back to Godhead. That's the goal. Hare Krishna. Otherwise, we'll be in this category that Prahlad Maharaj is speaking about here. Of course, I don't think any of us really qualifies as a madman wasting the remaining years of life because of not engaging in devotional service. But we don't want to be in that category. We want to be one who gets really into Krishna. Speaking of Krishna's sense gratification, I'd like to read a little pastime for the pleasure of the devotees if you've stayed awake thus far. You've been listening. Thank you for having to listen to me twice in a row. But I promise you won't get me tomorrow, and you can finally enjoy Bhagavatam class again. But I'll just share one little pastime, just so that we can remember a bit about Krishna's sense gratification. As Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, Krishnendriya Priti Icha Dhare Prema Nama. Love means satisfying the senses of Krishna. That's all. Krishna Indriya Priti Icha. So here's some commentary from some of the acharyas on Krishna's pastimes with his cows in Vrindavan, uh, coming to us through the translation and commentary of Swami Shivaram Swami. But when Krishna enjoys tending to his cows in Vrindavan, Sri Krishna touches the Chintamani soil of Braja with his soft, reddish feet. Thus it is beautified with his footprints, which are the supreme ornament of ornaments, invisible to Svarga or Vaikunta. Although the son of a king, possessed of great riches, many happy subjects, and numerous Sarabi cows, following the practice of cowherds, Sri Krishna avoids any footwear. Let's remember, Krishna is the Prince of Vraj. It might not be an enormous, opulent kingdom, but it's opulent in a way that no other kingdom can compare. So Krishna is the prince. And so, he's entitled to all sorts of luxuries. But he goes out barefoot with the cows, and we're going to hear why. Following the practice of cowherds, Sri Krishna avoids any footwear. Mother Yashoda, who was always brooding over her little son, is aggrieved at Govinda's persistence in going barefoot. Fearing the cows may tread on his feet, thorns may prick his toes, or the hot sands blister his soles, she says, "Oh, my dear child, the life of my heart and my only wealth in this world, although we have hundreds of cowherd men expert in keeping cows, who have never let even one calf go astray, you say, 'I will herd the cows myself.' Now, why do you have such needless desires? You're just a tender child, still sucking your mother's milk. But you wander on the rough roads in the heat of the day with no shoes or umbrella. How do you expect your loving parents to even survive such a thought?" Srila Prabhupada would sometimes comment on Krishna anxiety and give as an example Mother Yashoda. She is always in Krishna anxiety. My dear boy, he's out there. He might step on a rough stone or something might happen to him. And so you can imagine the sort of ecstatic love that she feels when Krishna is entangled in the coils of Kaliya or holding up Govardhan Hill in his left hand. We can't even comprehend the intensity of the love that she feels. She can't even think about Krishna stepping on a stone. She might step on a rough stone. So what do you think she feels when Krishna's wrestling with Kali and Nag? Anyway, I can't get into that right now. So, smiling very sweetly, holding Yashoda's hands in his own, Sri Krishna replies, "Dear mother, our caste duty as Vaishyas is to tend to the comfort and nourishment of the cows. Like the cows who wear no footwear, a cowherd must go barefoot." You hear that? Nagari Krishna, Prabhu? You got to go barefoot when you're tending to the cows. A cowherd must go barefoot. Only by following these details of tradition is our profession purely executed. I'm being sarcastic, of course. I think our Gita Nagari cowherd men should wear, and women should wear, warm socks and boots because it's cold out here. But Krishna is saying the cows go barefoot, so I'll go barefoot too. Like the cows who wear no footwear, a cowherd must go barefoot. Only by following these details of tradition is our profession purely executed. Embracing the butter-soft body of her son, Yashoda replies, "Oh, my precious little son, your foot soles are like the spotless tender leaves of crimson lotus flowers, and the forest soil is full of sprouts, thorns, and pebbles. Why did you take birth in a family of cowherds, where you must walk after the grazing cows? You should have been born in a family of great royalty." Krishna was born in a family of great royalty, but Mother Yashoda can't comprehend that or doesn't want to consider the rumor that Krishna might actually be the son of Devaki and Vasudeva. But that's an ecstasy that I can't even comprehend. Turning to Nanda Maharaj, whose tears of affection glisten in his graying mustache. Nanda Maharaj and Yashoda, they're actually a bit elderly for parents. It's described in the Srimad Bhagavatam, you can read in Krishna book as well, that that for so long they wanted to have a child. They wanted to have Krishna as their child. As we know in their previous lives, actually, they worshipped the Lord Prishnigarbha and prayed to have Krishna as a child. Although actually Nanda and Yashoda are eternally the mother and father, so-called mother and father of Krishna. Um, anyway, there's so many layers to the backstory. Let me just get to the point where when Nanda Maharaj comes to Mathura and sees Vasudeva, Vasudeva congratulates Nanda for having a son, Krishna, Krishna and Balaram, are having the son Krishna, and actually says to Nanda, I know that for so long you've been trying to have a child. And it is described also that Nanda has salt and pepper hair, it means he already has black and gray hairs, and yet they're having their first child. And this is just another ingredient in the ecstasy of their Vatsalya Prema. So they're actually relatively older for parents. So turning to Nanda Maharaj, whose tears of affection glisten his graying mustache, she says, the road where our boys walk will be scorched by the sun, and still I remain alive, seeing this father staying home in his golden brick house. So, even amongst the Brajbasis, pure devotees of the Lord, there's always this rasa between husband and wife. How do I remain alive seeing this father staying home in his golden brick house? Pulling on her cloth, Krishna humbly replies, Mother, had you seen the beautiful paths leading through the forest of Braj, you would know we feel no trouble in tending the cows. Indeed, it is the source of our greatest pleasure. Because the chamari deer sweep them with their tails, the trees shower them with their honey, and the nabi deer scent them with their navel musk. These paths are flawless and as soft as cotton. Then we play in the dense, cool shade of the fragrant trees, moistened by the spray of the Yamuna, taking care to protect the cows from any danger. For us, the heat of the scorching sun is far, far away. Having concluded his arguments, Sri Krishna continues to walk barefoot throughout the paths of Vrindavan, marking the earth with his distinctive footprints. Caring for the great herd of Nanda's 900,000 cows, one would expect Gopala's footprints to be short-lived. However, an agreement among the many creatures of Vrindavan has ensured the safety of their wealth. Although Sri Krishna is the master of the cowherds, he is also the darling of the cows and forest creatures who traverse the common paths. Oh, it doesn't describe. That agreement amongst all the animals is that when they see the footprints of Krishna, they don't step on them. It doesn't say here. Oh, no, it does say. I'm sorry. Although Sri Krishna is the master of the cowherds, he is also the darling of the cows and the forest creatures who traverse the common paths. Anything in relation to him is equally dear to them. In his commentary to a previous verse, Sanatana Goswami tells of a great meeting which took place among the boys and animals, in which they agreed to preserve Sri Krishna's footprints as their forest ornament. To avoid covering these marks with their own, all living entities of Braj are ever careful where they walk. Hare Krishna. So, Krishnandiya Prita Icha Dhare Prema Nama. The definition of prema, love, is just to be absorbed in pleasing Krishna senses. Just like all the boys and animals of Braj please Krishna's senses, the trees are pleasing Krishna's senses, the cows are pleasing Krishna's senses, Yashoda and Nanda are pleasing Krishna's senses, and of course the gopis are pleasing Krishna's senses. At some point we must make the critical transformation from kamendriya, making the senses near and dear, which is a type of madness, to Krishnendriya Priti, just being only concerned with pleasing Krishna's senses. No matter what status of life we're in, whether it be a renunciate or grihasta with a license for sense gratification, still, that transformation must happen today, preferably. Hare Krishna. I'll stop there. Uh, thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in. Uh, before we retire to a day full of hearing and chanting about Krishna, I'll ask if there's any questions or comments or additions or subtractions or multiplications or divisions, cosines or tangents. There's been plenty of tangents. No? If there's no questions or comments, then thank you, dear devotees, for listening to Srimad Bhagavatam. Oh, Ajamil Prabhu, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. I just want to say thank you for a wonderful class today. It really hits home a lot. And I want to ask if you could please put a copy of those apps that you are using in the Gita Nagari connections. Just a list of them or something, or maybe you can do a little video about the apps you use for getting some of those quotes and stuff. Be very nice to be able to use them.
Okay. I do have some great apps that a friend of mine developed for comprehensive searching through Prabhupada's books. It uses an AI model, but only in Prabhupada's books without generating content. And it's a great way to search for things. But I was just talking about note-taking apps because whenever I read something interesting, I put it in a note. But then I've got like 6 different apps that I'm using for that. And so I get kind of confused. I should just put them all in one.
Okay. Well, that's very nice. I think I'm curious as to how you gathered those, and just explaining that a little bit, because it's wonderful when you are reading, or when we're reading, how we can organize our thoughts a little
Yeah.
bit better in our notes and stuff. But thank you so much for a wonderful
Hare
class.
Krishna.
It really hit a chord with me today in thinking about those particular attachments that we have in the material world, and especially lusty desires and all that sort of stuff, and how we can really, if we utilize this time to really engage ourselves more in trying to serve Krishna. Simply that. So Hare Krishna, that's all I have to
Jai,
say.
thank you. Ajamil Prabhu, Hare Krishna. Krishna consciousness. Okay. Uh,
Prabhu,
oh, Haribol Taraka Prabhu.
yeah, I want to thank you for a really nice class, and started out good, and then it it became great. That was Shiva Ramaswamy you were reading from.
Yeah, it's a little excerpt from Venu Gita, which is just additional commentaries from acharyas about pastimes from Bhagavatam.
Very, very nectarian. That was very nice. Thank you very much for that added tsunami of nectar. That that was delightful. Yeah, I just want to thank. I'm still relishing. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Taraka Prabhu. Oh my God. Hari Chakra Prabhu. Haribol, dear Hari Chakra Prabhu.
Yeah,
How are you?
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Thank you very much for your class. Um, in the text and the purport as well, I think it looks as if more emphasis is made on is put on on more emphasis is put on what we call sense gratification as sex life. That's the raw aspect of sex life, having sex or something. But we understand that. Honor, distinction, adoration, and all these aspects of then are like a form of sex sex life too. Uh, because anything that is anything that is done outside of thinking of Krishna, but you put yourself in the center, it's like you're trying to become what you are no more accepting yourself as Prakriti, but you're trying to be the enjoyer. So I'm thinking if you can explain a little bit more about the lasting desires, if it's actually limited to the direct sex life in Grihastha life. Am I clear with my question?
Yes, Prabhu. You've come to the
Yeah.
right person because I am the expert in lusty desires. I have many, many lifetimes of experience. I'm still giving it one more go. But no, you made an important point here that really all of that lusty desire, it stems from sexual attraction. That is really the origin because we're meant to be attracted to Krishna. But the perversion is that we find ourselves attracted to our own body or to other bodies when that attraction is meant to be for Krishna. And so that's like the root, the root of all other desire. And this is described by Lord Rishabhadev in the fifth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, wherein he says, Pumksa striya maituni bhava metam tayor mito hridaya granti mahu ato griha kshetra sutapta vitar janasya mohoyam aham mameti. That it really begins with the attraction between male and female, pumksa striya maituni bhavam, or any maituni bhavam. The homosexuals are not exempt. Maituni bhava means the attraction for another body. And it creates this strong knot in the heart, hridaya grantim. There's a knot in the heart that was very hard to undo it. It's very hard to untie that knot. And then from that, he says, ato griha, then there's attachment to house, kshetra, land, sutta, children, apta, like relatives and social circles, vitaya, one's wealth. These all expand from that original maituni bhava. And janasya mohoyam aham mameti is the bewilderment of all people and causes them to think in terms of I and mine. Aham mama, me and mine. So at its root really is this sexual desire, which is why it's also the pinnacle of enjoyment in this world. That's why it's also something to be handled very carefully. Best, of course, to just completely avoid it. But for most of us who can't do that, at least to keep it within the legal confines of a marriage. So that's my understanding that really at the root is this sexual desire. It is a serious issue. We should not take it lightly. We should take shelter of certain ashrams that can help us to deal with the root cause and become attached to Krishna. Besides that, Prabhu, I don't know much about kama.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I know
Yeah,
you
yeah.
you of course know, but thanks for giving me an opportunity to share this one shloka. A very interesting shloka. Pumsastriya Maituni Bhava Metams. Fifth canto, chapter 5, text number 8. So, Jai, okay, 2 minutes after 8 o'clock, which means time is up. Thank you, dear devotees, for tuning in. Grantaraj, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai Gaur Premanandi, Hari Hari Bol.